Hello, everyone. Welcome to the InstructLab CLI community meeting. Today is July 25th, 2024. This is kind of the way I was thinking of doing this is I know it's been a while since we had a formal update about anything iLab related. So I was hoping to give an update to the community about what the work we've been doing behind the scenes and some important updates functionality-wise and just process-wise for the project that I think people would benefit from getting some context on. But before we start, does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns, anything they want to add to the agenda? Feel free. No? Cool. Okay, so the first thing I added here is that iLab now has a library-based approach. I put some useful links here for people just for context. So the CLI, which everyone's familiar with, is the InstructLab, community CLI that everyone uses, downloads, stuff like that. The way a lot of this used to work is a lot of the functionality was in this repository. However, we now have a couple of libraries, such as the training library, the eval library, and STG are the core ones. I don't think I'm forgetting any of them, but if I am, someone can correct me. These three libraries make up like all the functionality that used to be in the commands, like iLab data generate, iLab model train. They all got moved to these libraries, and the actual underlying code and logic to run these processes is fundamentally different than what it was prior to iLab 17.1. So iLab model train, if you run it and you have a GPU accelerated machine, you'll notice the output looks completely different. That's because under the hood, the actual code and like the libraries used to train the models are totally different. So I kind of just wanted to bring this up so that if people pip install from main or pip install one of our alpha releases, they might not recognize the state of the project. But rest assured, we've done this because the library approach and the functionality that we've added to the project is greatly surpasses what we had before, I would say. What we had before was great, but the new functionality really takes it to the next level. And even if you have a consumer level GPU, it really enhances the experience, especially I would say training and SDG are really overhauled and work great. Eval is a new one, so you can evaluate your models now using the iLab model eval command, and it plugs into this library. I'm not going to go too far in depth into the actual libraries themselves. I think people can look at those in their free time, and they can try them out really and file bugs accordingly, because we're trying to get these in the hands of users so we can figure out where the gaps in functionality lie, since it was a pretty functional overhaul. Anyone have any questions on any of that, or does anyone from the InstructLab team have anything they want to add or go more in depth on? Nope. I'll take that as a resounding no. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I kind of just wanted to put that on the table for people so they're familiar with what the project is up to, because I know in the last month or so we've been kind of heads down in work mode, but these libraries are kind of a game changer functionality wise. So feel free to test them out, file any bugs in the CLI or in the libraries themselves as you find them, and let us know how they work. The next thing on the agenda, which kind of is related to this, is that you might notice in our releases, I can actually show you, we have been doing alpha releases. These are really just to get bleeding edge features and stuff like that. We have been doing this because we don't think 18 is ready yet for us to ship an actual dot version, and we're be confident that we won't be breaking a lot of functionality. But the alphas are getting to the point where they're pretty clean. They work pretty well, but they also introduce a lot of features as compared to 17 and 17.1. So just putting this out there, so if people want to pip install these alphas, try them out, file bugs in the proper library or in the CLI. That would be great. We're really looking for feedback on the functionality we've changed. A lot of the UX has also changed as well. A lot of the how the config works in iLab, and the way the commands inherit stuff from the config is totally different than it was in 17. Hopefully it's easier and works better, but you'll notice some changes. So a lot of the stuff that used to work in 17.17.1, you might have to just run an iLab config init again to get a lot of the stuff to work out of the box. This is another item on the agenda. Yeah, so just note that when you run iLab config init, if you have a custom config from a previous version, you'll probably lose some of that custom stuff, right? So if you, after you initialize your config, if you modified some of the entries, or if you used a custom config file, the format of the config has totally changed. So you'll have to, the way I recommend doing it, if you have an old config somewhere that you have a lot of custom stuff in, you can save that elsewhere and then run iLab config init to get our default config, and then just kind of copy and paste parts of your old config where they still fit into the new one to get some of that functionality that you might have tailored over some of the releases. But I think Nathan added this. Just note that the directories in which your config and your models are stored has changed. So it used to be just the working directory that you were in, you make a models directory. The config YAML would also be stored there. But now a lot of the stuff is stored in, like the config is stored in, I'm pretty sure it's your home directory .config /InstructLab /config YAML. And then the models are stored in home directory .local share InstructLab and then models. So there's a lot of stuff in all of those. So we started using local share and .config just to kind of like fit with the XEG runtime sort of workflow. A lot of it is improved, of course, over using the working directory. You might notice some breakages if you try to use some old configs or old models that were in the directories that we're no longer reading from. So all of this goes to say stuff might break, but we hope that the performance lift is really beneficial to the users. Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. If you all want some folks to test it, we can share it with folks. But my question is there any guidance? And I know everybody's heads down, so I wouldn't expect something really thoroughly written out. But any guidance in terms of like what the gotchas are, what you need to change if you're migrating or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't have a precise migration plan because the config kind of changed so much between versions. The way that I described it is probably the best one. Is a lot of it's going to be manual between like 0.16 and 0.18, which is unfortunate. But then going forward, we added versioning to our config, and we're hoping that we're gonna develop some sort of backwards compatibility plan between versions going forward after 0.18. So right now the config is versioned at 1.0.0. So we realistically can't make any major breaking changes in between versions anymore. So it's going to be pretty stable from here on out. A lot of the stuff that was in stuff like chat and generation, not a lot of that fundamentally changed. There are some new fields and some altered ones. I would say the biggest thing is we added a train section to the config, which previously did not exist. So that actually shouldn't break much because it wasn't there before. And then serve changed quite a bit because we added the VLLM backend as well as the one that was previously, which was Llama CPP. So that you might run into some errors there, but all of those should be pretty straightforward because there's not too many configurable fields there. And we also added an evaluation part of the config. So most of it is additions that previously didn't exist. So you might not run into a lot of collisions, but regardless, the commands won't work until you initialize the new format of the config because it expects some same defaults. So there might be some copy and pasting you have to do, but nothing really should be too bad, I don't think.
And I know a couple of hands up, so I'll be quick. It might be good, and again, I know a formal thing, is out of scope right now. But maybe like in the Slack channel, like if folks want to try this, the latest version, here's the link, and here are the couple of things you might need to do, just informally, and then because I don't want people to start, asking questions and filing bugs or whatever if it's kind of known stuff. So I'd be happy to help spread the word if that's what we'd like.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I mean, I was kind of using this meeting as the first iteration of that. Like, hey, we changed a lot of stuff. Let's get people testing it. And then going forward, I was thinking of having some sort of like public blast and saying things like, oh, hey, we have a lot of new versions, a lot of new features. Go try them out.
Cool. Yeah, and I wouldn't blast it widely. I just know some folks internally would be curious to hammer it up. Cool.
Cool. So I think it was Nathan first, I think.
Yeah. So very much in the lieu of what Joe was saying. So Joe, like one thing that we've done, and we actually have an issue for this as well, is we've had a rolling change log with a lot of this kind of major new features and breaking changes. So I think what we want to do before we officially do the public 0.18.0 release is get some sign off from folks to make sure that's kind of full and complete and accurate. So that might be something where it would be good to have external eyes on that, just to make sure that we're covering anything. And if someone's playing with the bits and they see that that things are not as expected, that we're not missing anything, because it's kind of one of those things where you stare at something for so long and you forget that it wasn't in the previous version. So I'll share that issue in the chat here. But yeah, that's probably, I think, the closest thing we have in terms of like a formal, like, this is how you go from 17 to 18. But I'll share that in the chat. I just wanted to call that out real quick.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate the willingness to help out with that.
Sure.
Yeah, and just in general, this is kind of our first iteration of re-engaging a lot of the community with all these new changes. So we're going to make a big effort to really show people all the work we've done, all the improvements and stuff like that. So we're going to make a concerted effort to do that going forward. Yeah, so that's kind of it for the alphas. I also know there might be some betas coming down the pipe. I'm not entirely sure when that's happening, but right now all we have is the alpha releases. We do them daily, I think. But like if there's nothing in an alpha, we won't do one. But we've had pretty consistent, like 10-ish PRs merge every day, stuff like that. So yeah, that's the state of things, I would say, at the moment. Anyone have any questions before I move on to the next topic? Cool. So the next one, I think this will be a joint one with Julia and Kelly. We have some taxonomy changes that I'll just butcher it if I try to describe it, so I'll leave it to the experts here. I know the format and some stuff has changed with the YAML, so if you guys want to describe the state of things and how we're going to deal with stuff going forward, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a YAML change for knowledge. I will walk through right now what that looks like. As for like what it's going to affect and when, we are still trying to sort all of that out. But yeah, so we have a new schema merge for knowledge. So that means version for knowledge is now 3. Another one of the like simpler changes is task description for knowledge is removed, and now it will be document outline. It will be similar to task description, but instead of saying teach the model about birds, it would say information about birds, including, and then add some specifics to it. And those specifics should correlate to the context. And yes, I did just say context. So this is the big change. Knowledge now has a context field. Very similar to how grounded skills have the context field. So with the context, there will be Q&A pairs. So for knowledge, how it's going to work, there will be a minimum of 5 context hunks. And then for each of the context hunks, there needs to be a minimum of 3 Q&A pairs. And the context hunk should be it should be the markdown from the knowledge document that you're trying to teach the model about. And then the Q&A pairs for the context should be questions and answers relating to the context above. Yeah, so that's the gist of it. We're working on getting it updated in the documentation, and getting more clear, explanation about this. Right now, it's just me doing my best to explain it to everybody, but I promise we'll get it on paper and out to everyone as soon as possible. We are just still trying to decide what the best timeline for that is. And yeah, so if anyone has questions, please let us know. Yeah. Kelly, did I miss anything?
No, yeah, same thing with what Julia was saying. We're just deciding on best way to deliver this because it is like a big change. It's going to have some impact on testing knowledge locally in the CLI. So we're just figuring out the best way to deliver it. But Julia, that was great. Yeah.
And one other thing, this change is making the UI efforts actually a lot more important, because obviously now doing it this way, writing a YAML file, like the time it takes to write your knowledge YAML file will most likely be doubled, if I'm being honest, because it is a lot more writing or typing, and it requires a little bit more thought to have the questions and answers match the context. So it does increase the amount of time, which is obviously not the best for users, because they don't want to be spending all their time on YAML files. They want to be spending their time on playing around with the model. So the UI stuff will actually be really important now. Not that it wasn't important before, but it will increase the importance of that. And that team is aware of it. And I will be working with them on like the nitty-gritty details, so that they can get their changes to work once this is all in flight.
One thing I will point out is that if anyone installs any of the alphas after alpha, which one is this? After alpha 6. So you can install alpha 5, 4, 3, whatever. Yeah, you can install any of those. And those will work with the old taxonomy format. Anything after 6 or after will require the new taxonomy format for knowledge. So that might be a little bit tricky because we don't exactly have examples up, I don't think, right now, that describe how to do this. I know like we can probably throw one together if people are really want to try it, but I would recommend maybe sticking with 5 and below if you're actively going to be testing the data generation and training aspect of InstructLab, which is kind of the whole thing. So keep that in mind when you choose which alpha to install. Yeah, that's just the one note I wanted to throw in there. Okay, I think if there's nothing else on that, Julia and Kelly, or do you guys want to say something else before I move on?
I guess the last thing would just be, if people think of other places that this change is going to affect, please let us know. Like, we have done our best to try and pin down everything it's going to affect, but we do keep noticing other things. One came up yesterday, like, for example, just, it affects the linter. And then, it might affect like CLI stuff. So just please, like, if you see something, just let us know so that we don't have anything fall through the cracks, or get to a point where it doesn't work just because we didn't think of it.
Yeah, we're really all around hoping that the community can start testing some stuff and showing us the things that we kind of missed. So that'd be great if people could let us know errors and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I see BJ's question in the chat. Was it mentioned that V1, V2 knowledge support is going away?
Is that a question for me?
You can answer it.
I'm not entirely sure, honestly, so I don't want to make a definitive stance on that. All I know is that I think V3 is the one that we're going to be focusing on, because I think it has some particular implications for the new data generation pipeline. So I would favor that schema, if that makes sense. But I have no knowledge about deprecation or anything like that of the other versions.
In conversation with Russell, he did confirm that support for the prior knowledge versions is going to go away, that the SDG process won't accept them at some point. I don't know that that's in yet, but that will be coming.
Okay.
That was my understanding from Akancha as well.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that the current standing of SDG is that it probably only accepts v3. I could be totally wrong. But I know there was a big push to get that v3 in to get SDG working properly. So that makes me think that they might only support that version. But I can confirm with proper people. Don't take anything I'm saying as gospel here, because I could be completely wrong. But that's just what I would assume. Okay. I think the next thing on the agenda, first of all, does anyone want to add any topics before we do the next thing? Because the next thing we're going to triage open issues into the 0.18 milestone, because we might have missed a few critical ones. But if there's anything anyone else wants to add before we do that, feel free to raise your hand or just jump in now. No? Cool. Okay. So I'll just share my screen since I'm already here. Nathan and folks, what do you think the best way to do this is? Should I just go to the open issues and we go through some of the new ones and see if anything should be added to the milestone? Because I think the way that the milestone currently exists, the 0.18 milestone, it's good, but the thing that I was hoping to do is make sure that we didn't miss any of these as things that should definitely be fixed before we can do that release. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I defer to Kim if Kim has any thoughts around that.
Just what do you guys want to do? Just run through all the open issues?
I wouldn't say all of them. So like off the top of my head, I have a good context as to like what each of these are. So we could don't have to open them all per se, but we can say, oh, that one might be crucial. Let's look at it and see if it should be added to the milestone. That's at least what I was thinking, because I think what's in the milestone is good and should remain in the milestone. And I know we did some triaging yesterday, but this is more of a, hey, did we miss any critical stuff? Does that kind of make sense to do? I feel like it kind of does.
Yeah, I mean we can do that on this call. Charlie, if you wanna, I don't know if this would be helpful to you, and I don't have access to the screen sharing, but if you want to look at all of the open issues in that CLI repo, I guess, on the as the project page, that might be more helpful.
This?
Yeah. Oh no, I meant actually go to the project page.
What do you mean by project page? Up here?
Yeah.
This.
And then do all the backlog, because it's that on there, it's ranked by priority if those are accurate, and I figured that's probably a better view for everyone looking through this.
Okay. The thing about this is that I don't know the last time that we actively did this, so these might be old. Is the only thing that I'm thinking. What do you think, Nathan and others?
Honestly, what I would probably do is just look at the zeros at 18.0 milestone and run through that. I agree that I think that the board's probably not in a place that's very accurate right now, and I don't think folks are really using the board.
All right,
I think we even made it private because we weren't using it, so I don't think it really makes sense to use the board here. Okay,
so let's just look at 18, just for not to keep this too long, and see if anything should be shuffled around. This first one is just a chore. Everyone that is on different components and on different libraries, just to make sure that the change log is up to date. Yes, Nathan.
I'm a little confused as to the blocker proposed label.
I put those on there, Nathan. I talked to Mo yesterday, and she basically said anything in that 18.0 milestone is a GA blocker proposed. So I put that label there, and then her and Tushar and Joe are also going to be going over this, like similar to what we're doing with the community right now. They're going to go over this on their end for like the UI aspect and seeing like if this actually is a blocker, then they're going to move it to blocker approved, and then it's going to, and then like that'll help prioritize for this milestone.
But isn't that what the milestone isn't? What's the difference between having something in the milestone and having this label? Same thing.
I think it's just like like organization, like for organization right now for like Mo and the PM's sake, like Tushar and Joe, because they're going to be going.
They just use the milestone.
Yeah, but
What's the benefit of
these
the label? Because I think we
so-
should limit using labels for things related to product in the upstream community.
right.
Like
Okay,
if this
so
label is going to exist, it should definitely go away at some point. If
yeah. It'll get removed. This is just for like organization's sake. So right now, these are all because technically the 18 milestone is also going to be for RHEL AI GA. So this is more so just like, is this actually a GA blocker on from their point of view, like from the user experience point of view? Because this is just like from the developer's point of view and the community's point of view. But like user experience, RHEL AI downstream point of view, they want to go through it on their end to actually either approve it or push it back to like 19 or later on. That was the idea behind it.
I still don't really see how it does. I'm still not saying what this is adding though. Like what is having the label? What is the difference between having the label and the milestone? I mean, when would these not be just the same thing?
Could I jump in and just
Yeah, sure.
propose maybe could we just rename the milestone, call it like 0.18.0 dash proposed blockers or something like that?
I don't think so. No, because the milestone should be related to a release, and right now it's. I mean, I don't see the benefit of renaming it. I think it makes it more confusing.
I mean, the way that I probably see it is people are probably going to go sort the issues by blocker proposed is probably the reason for the label, which I kind of agree with you, Nathan. It's just kind of like seems like we're like
It just kind of seems cluttery to me. But
I agree, but it's also not a big
temporary.
deal.
I guess it's fine, but
Yeah, it's
I just
temporary. It's
don't see
not like a long term.
Yeah, but
thing.
I just don't see the benefit, to be honest. It just seems like kind of cluttering the labels, but I don't know.
Cool.
I'm not sold on the fact that it needs to exist, but I don't want to take up all the time with this.
Okay, let's look at these quickly. This one is change log. I don't think we need to look at that. That we all know that we're responsible for the stuff that goes in the change log, and that should be in this milestone. Multi-phase model training. I know this is James. He's not here, so there might not be a point in actually going over this one. But what this is going to do is it's going to allow people to run training and evaluation in a single pass with multiple phases, versus what you would have to do currently is run iLab model train and then iLab model evaluate over and over. This will actually make people's lives a lot easier in terms of just put a single command in there and it should probably just do it all at work. This is the first pass of that. So this is the issue related to the PR. We've been putting both issues and PRs in milestones. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's what we've been doing. We should probably document that somewhere if that's what we're going to do, because I know that we've triaged a couple of times, and as we've done it, we've accidentally clicked on both the issue and the PR and been like, oh wait, this is just the PR associated with the issue. So maybe we should change that process if anyone has any opinions on that. But anyway, default logging format and logging format option. This is Sebastian. Oh, it's Tira, but Sebastian's assigned. I think this is just making the logging with InstructLab work better. As people install the alphas, they might notice a lot of new info logs. Please file bugs for those because I think a lot of accidental logs were added. I've noticed a bunch of them as I install each alpha. So if you notice any extraneous logs, please let us know. This should make the system better. I'm pretty sure, but there's definitely some bugs. So this looks like it's in progress. So I think this should probably be kept in there. Thoughts, questions, concerns on this one? No. Cool. This one is a CI one. I'm assigned to this, as is Ali and Alina. This is basically just get the full iLab workflow actually running in CI. So the way that our CI works currently is a lot of them are kind of mocked up and they all are there, but they're not taking the full data from the previous commands. So like iLab model evaluate, for example, doesn't use the trained model from iLab model train as the input. It just uses the Granite model, which, you know, displays functionality, but isn't the true workflow. So we want to get CI working end to end, or I guess like start to finish. It's kind of end to end is kind of an overloaded word, but we need the end to end test running with end to end InstructLab data, if that makes sense. This is what that is. I think this makes sense for this to be here. I guess the question I should be asking is, should any of these be moved to an alpha? Do people think, or a beta, or should we keep them all in 18 for now and do that separately? Because like I think this, for example, the CI one should happen soon, but it's just in this one.
I think for now we can just leave it there. If we want to do that, we can do that.
Okay. All right. Next one is similar to this one. It's just, you know, make sure the README and the change log are both up to date. We can skip this one because it's a chore. This is really important, actually. This was opened by Oleg. I see a hand. Yes, Judy.
Sorry, it's not about this issue. I just wanted to propose raising a new issue that I'm looking at. I was in the process of typing it up, but I thought I might just bring it up while I'm doing it and type it up. So we can like discuss this one first if you want, and
Okay.
talk about my issue after.
Sure. Yeah. So this is just making sure that legacy training, this might be confusing to some people. What is legacy training? So with the new libraries, the old Linux train workflow is now accessible via -- legacy, which is just a flag. So people should use this if they want to do CPU training, because the training library doesn't yet support CPU training. But if you have a GPU, don't use legacy, because the performance of the training library is much better. But what this is going to do is this PR will save the checkpoints of legacy training in that local share InstructLab directory I was talking about earlier. This one's important. It should be a pretty quick one, actually. I think Oleg just needs to rebase it. But yeah, so this should stay. And I think because it needs a rebase, we should keep it in this one, not put it in alpha. Yep, JDP, you can go now.
Thanks. I guess it is somewhat related to that issue after all. So iLab model train currently, like if you just run iLab model train, that kicks off legacy training in the CLI. Is that correct? Like the older?
No. You need to specify -- legacy to do the old train.
Got it. That's fine. My only thing is that right now iLab model train always tries to download the model from Hugging Face, right? Even if it already exists. Like I want to propose that we have a couple other ways to download models also as well, like iLab model download, and you can download safe tensors directly from Hugging Face. And we recently added support for downloading models from OCI registries also. So you can download like Hugging Face or safe tensor models from there. And so like right now there is a workflow where like someone might download a safe tensor model with the express purpose of using it for training, but when they run iLab model train, it like tries to download the model again anyway. So like I was going to propose that we should try to make it so that we look at like a singular centralized cache. Like Hugging Face download should also look at the same cache and see that if it's previously been downloaded, either through like an OCI registry or whatever, if that model already exists in cache, like we should not try to keep downloading the model again.
I'm pretty sure I think Mark Stavros had a PR that merged yesterday that put all of the models in the same place in the cache directory. So it could probably be pretty easy to just query that and see if everything that we downloaded is there.
Yeah.
Right?
I think, yeah, it's just that I think we create a separate cache, like a dedicated cache directory, but when you do like a Hugging Face download, there's like a
Like
dot
somewhere
Hugging
else.
Face.
Yeah.
But
So
I think
we can
the
look at
Hugging
both.
Face cache is separate. So like just trying to point the Hugging Face cache to like what exists already so we can avoid duplication. That's kind of what I was thinking. And I probably,
This actually reminded me of something. There's also another training quirk that is related that I'm pretty sure the training library expects the model to be on disk only, versus our current training takes a Hugging Face repository optionally to use to download the model from. And in my experience, if you specify that, it doesn't work. The training library gets confused and says that the model isn't there. It has to be like a valid safe tensor that's on your machine. So we might want to fix both of these in separate PRs, but I can follow up with you after this, JD, and we can make some issues for training and put them in here if we think that they're necessary.
yeah, sounds good. There's like another related quirk, I think, is that the directory structure that gets created depending on how you download models is like slightly inconsistent because I think Hugging Face tries to create, like we already have InstructLab/models, and then when you do a Hugging Face download, it creates InstructLab/models/Granite or whatever. And like instead of like doing that, it should just be like InstructLab/model/the name of the model. And then if that's consistent, then like you can, it'd be easy to find it from other methods as well.
Yeah. So the reason I did that, the reason I did that is because say you're downloading InstructLab/Granite 7B Lab versus downloading Mistral AI/Mixtral 7B, whatever, saving those to disk because they're safe tensors, right? So the way that we originally had it with the models directory that was local is it made sense to have like, oh, inside of models that's in your working directory and create an InstructLab folder. And then inside of that, put Granite and Merlinite. And then in the other one, if you're downloading Mixtral, you can put like, oh, inside of the Mistral AI one, put Mixtral and so forth. I do see that now there's a little bit of redundancy in terms of like if you're downloading an InstructLab model, but then, yeah, I guess we could get rid of that repository level
I mean,
folder. But
we just have to do one or the other. I mean, I
Yeah.
think if your idea was to maintain like a fully qualified sort of directory structure where you can just look at all of the models you're using with InstructLab are in InstructLab/models, but they can be coming from either the InstructLab repo or like Mistral AI or something, and you want to like qualify that with like more for directory structure, and that's fine. I'm not like, I don't have a strong opinion that it has to be like 2 levels higher or anything, but we just
Yeah.
should be consistent so that other methods can, like, if you're trying to devise a caching mechanism that can be like, hey, first look whether this directory exists, then like at least we're all aligned that we're always looking for the same kind of directory structure. So we can,
Yeah, that makes sense. So like even the GGUF should probably go in those nested folders if that's the way we're gonna do it, or nothing should go in them, is what you're saying, right?
yeah, either, yeah, just all or nothing. So that when if we try to devise a mechanism that, hey, I want Hugging Face to look for this place first, and like if it exists, then like it should automatically not re-download it. So as long as we have that consistency, then I think
Okay.
we could.
Yeah, let's follow up after this and talk about those. I'm just gonna write them down so I don't forget. So the
Yeah.
your first one was in like 5 words. How would you describe it?
Where I think just reducing the model download duplication during iLab model training.
Right.
If there is a model that's already been downloaded, just that it can't find it.
And then mine was that sometimes you can't specify HF path. HF path doesn't work in train.
Yeah.
And the last one was the repo/model nested directories stuff.
Yeah. And for this first part specifically, it's that I think iLab model train puts it in like a Hugging Face cache as opposed to looking at the dedicated generic iLab cache that we've put in place now.
Okay. Cool. Thanks for that. So we can follow up. I don't know if we can do all of those by GA, but we can like pick and choose the ones that we think are super important.
Yeah, I mean, these are just general quality of life improvements
I agree.
for the project.
Incomplete read error during iLab model train. Oh, this is a CI thing. I I think this is just like a, I've never seen this happen locally. The thing about this one is that I don't know if this should be considered 0.18 because if it's not always reproducible and it only happens in CI, then I wouldn't necessarily call it an InstructLab blocker. But I'll write this one down unless people have thoughts on this. Should we boot this to 0.19 or what do people think? Crickets. Okay, I'll write this down. We can talk about it offline. I'll write down the number and I'll bring it up in Slack. 1830. Cool. Okay. This is me. iLab model list. This should probably be in this one because of the nature of what we were just talking about. That the models are all in different places.
Yeah.
Having the ability to list them is important. My first pass of this might not be might not grab all those locations just so we can get something that works. I don't know if I accounted for all the different places that we put everything, but this one should be passing relatively soon.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that. Do you think this is kind of blocked by the third sub-problem that we discussed of like inconsistent foldering?
I think it is blocked, but we shouldn't wait. I think we should merge this in roughly the state that it's in, just so that we have something that can list the general models directories. And then I added tests for it, so the test won't pass if we break stuff. And then as we're fixing the other thing, we can fix this as well. I think getting something into one of the alphas that will probably release today is important because I know people have been complaining about not being able to know where their models are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's fine. The ordering isn't like a strict thing anyway, so.
But it's related, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We can make that once
we'll make
we have that issue up.
Okay. Next is, this is a draft because I don't know if I have the cycles to work on this with all the other stuff, but I know that some other folks definitely have some more context here, like Ali and Alina, about using this is what I was talking about earlier. It's kind of a sub PR related to this end-to-end runs, not using the full iLab workflow. This is the one that takes the fully trained model and feeds it into evaluation. This just needs some attention and some work. I know there's some other blockers, so I'm not even going to go into this one, but it definitely should be in 0.18. But there's some work that has to be done to get it working properly in terms of STG and some eval stuff as well. And I know that VLLM is crucial for this one. We have some bugs with VLLM right now.
Yeah, I assigned that to myself, so I can take that off your plate.
Wonderful. Thank you. I mean, you just missed this, Alina. It sounds like we're about to get like 4 more bugs related to model storage and training. So that would be really useful if you could take this one. I think JD and I are going to be working on some weird caching directory stuff.
Okay, awesome.
iLab global config. This is an interesting one that I'll preface. Is just like having the ability to set an environment variable that when it's set, it kind of serves as like a different template from which to build your config off of. We're having this for some downstream purposes, but basically, if you ever want to have a config that you don't want to mess with, put it somewhere else, set that environment variable, run iLab config init, and we'll basically duplicate it into your home config directory, and you can mess around with that config, but you'll always be able to restore it by just running iLab config init again. We're doing this because sometimes we need to have some custom configurations for different use cases with GPUs and such. So this one definitely in 0.18, and it's almost ready to merge, I think.
Yeah, it should be mentioned that like this kind of works off of like an environment variable, but if you don't set it, it basically should just work the way it already does. It just gives you the ability to kind of have like this safe experimental config pair, if you will, which kind of lets you if you know that something works and you want to be able to fall back to it in case something goes wrong, then you have that option. But it should not break any existing workflows.
Yep. Thanks for that. And this last one is the PR. That's the implementation of the list command we were talking about up here. And that's it. I think this is a pretty good set of stuff. We don't want to add too much more, but I think we should add some subset of what JDP and I were just talking about with basically where models are stored. Because there are some inconsistencies with training that I've run into as well. Anyone else have anything that they want to add or things that they've run into, or if anyone's already tested any of the alphas and they want to file some bugs? Anything from anyone? No? Cool. JD, I see you unmuted.
Oh no, nothing.
That's kind of it for the meeting. Unless anyone else had a topic they wanted to throw on there or questions. Yep, Costa.
Hi. Okay, so I have a question about installing VLLM. I've used before Llama CPP. It was good, but I have issues. I have issues with VLLM. Does it require SCUDA, or I don't know, or can it run without accelerator?
So VLLM, in all honesty, shouldn't really be used by the laptop workflow in most scenarios. So if you don't have an accelerator, there's not a huge benefit to using it. So I know there's a lot of bugs outstanding with VLLM that Ali has a lot of context on. I don't think Ali's here. I'm not the VLLM expert. He kind of is. But if you are running into issues with VLLM, I would use the Llama CPP backend instead if you're on something without GPUs.
So, okay, so actually, I would like to install and run it just for testing and just for because for example, I'm performing refactoring, and I would like to check that refactoring works.
Yeah, so I can follow up with you offline and connect you with Ali, who's kind of like our resident VLLM expert, because he just got forced into doing a lot of the work with VLLM. So he knows a lot of the answers to these questions. Off the top of my head, I probably can't debug it, but he most definitely can, if that works.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Also, I would like to talk about importing documents from Wiki and Wikipedia. I've made some draft, and I've made a proposal on DevDocs, and I would like to promote it. As you probably know, you know that now synthetic data generator pulls documents from MD files, markdown files. And the markdown files, for examples, was just copy pasted from Wikipedia. And I would like to add native support to import the documents from Wikipedia, but not only Wikipedia, also from Confluence, but it will be another stage.
Mm-hmm. So I know that the reason that we do the kind of like copy and paste method from Wikipedia is that a lot of the formatting on Wikipedia, and I know like tables and bolding and basically inferred things, like if you have a bolded word that indicates that the bolded word is the answer, the data generation process doesn't really like that. So it's more of a technical hurdle we'd have to get over in terms of like converting the wiki into the proper format and markdown. But I think if we can get over that hurdle, I don't see why this wouldn't be a great thing to add. I don't know if Julia, Kelly, or I see JDP have your hand up if you want to add something.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that, but I was just going to suggest that we probably have something like this already somewhere, but like a collection of common pitfalls that we've encountered, things like the bold and the tables and such. I'm fairly sure we probably have those documented somewhere, but if we don't, we should definitely do that. And if we do, if someone can just paste a link to that in the chat, that'd be awesome.
JD, could you be a little more specific what you mean about that? Are you talking about like markdown?
Just like things like Charlie said, that we know that if there's like things that are bolden to say that this is the answer, like if our models are not that great at picking that up, or like we know that having a lot of tables and things like that is not great, we would want like more text that's plain text. Like if we want to push users to a certain direction in terms of what they're submitting for best results, just having that kind of listed out, like, hey, watch out for these things. That's all I was suggesting.
Yeah, so we do have that. We are currently working on getting a different example into the README for knowledge. Everything is also a little bit up in the air right now for knowledge because of the YAML change. But so we are working on getting that example changed. Then we also have those guidelines. I think they're already written, but they are not up to date because knowledge is now open to a lot more sources than just Wikipedia. And we're also now saying you can use, like before it was a suggested pandoc conversion method. So the markdown notes are very specific to the pandoc conversion method that we have laid out for people to do and for just Wikipedia. So we need to increase or we need to add documentation for other converting stuff too. But that is not something that we have any bandwidth for. And that is something that the triage team actually has been working on. And, you know, this comes up in discussion a lot in our triage meetings. So I would suggest reaching out in the triage channel or coming to a triage meeting to talk more about this.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yep. I think, yeah, I kind of agree with the sentiment there. I think that the triage meeting is probably the best place for this conversation because it's more like a taxonomy and YAML formatting question. Because I think we would love to have this sort of functionality if it can fit into the workflow properly. But
I think it's actually a cross-cutting concern because not only does the YAML need to have some information in there about which particular Confluence wiki you want to absorb information from, right? The command line tools need to understand it so you can use it on your workstation. The back end needs to understand it because it has to be able to actually build, you know, to generate the synthetic data from that knowledge. It has to be able to then, you know, use that to train. So it's not, that's why there's a dev doc, right? Because it's a cross-cutting concern, but I think it is a big lift. It's not a simple change, it's a big change. And so it will take time and coordination to effect.
Yeah, and a lot of the triagers will probably have feedback for this as well and good input, like Luke and JJ.
Yep, I agree.
Do you agree with that, BJ? That the triage team will have input?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I think that we would all agree that having many different kinds of knowledge sources would be awesome, but it is a lot of work in a lot of parts of the system, right? Schemas need updating, checking tools need updating, command line tools need updating, backends need updating. And so it's a heavy lift. That's all. It's just not as simple as changing the YAML schema.
Yeah, I think we actually have a dev doc for that specifically for knowledge sources, so we can get this added to that.
Well, it's more than just the knowledge source. It's the knowledge format that we're talking about here, right? Because he's not saying, I want to give you markdown files. He wants to give you the URL to a Confluence wiki and tell you to go slurp knowledge out of it, right? And so that's not the same as saying, I want to get markdown, but I want to get it from, the government website as a source material. So it's a much bigger lift.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll look into this more, and then we can, maybe bring it up later in triage.
Cool. Thanks for the input, everyone. I personally have to drop at the top of the hour. I don't know if anyone has any topics they want to add. But I appreciate all the participation. This was a great meeting, and we recorded it, so we'll be publishing the recording somewhere publicly. I'm going to stop the recording now, unless anyone has any other topics before I do.
Thanks, Charlie.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.